The Oracle Network. Look deeper.
Welcome to Brew Crime. I'm Mike.
I'm Beck.
And I'm Nina.
All right. This episode, I think we'll just call it Fuck 2020. I think that was our working title.
Sounds good to me.
I mean, I feel bad because 2020 was pretty good for me, like personally, but globally, not so much.
Yeah, globally it was a pile of steaming dog shit.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you're insulting steaming dog shit when you say that.
That is true. That is true.
Have you guys watched that Netflix show?
Which one?
Yeah.
I think that's what you just referenced. Yeah, it was, what is it called? Like Death to 2020. And one of the actresses, it's like a parody where they talk about things that happened in the year, like throughout the entire year, not just obviously COVID or whatever, but I think one of them was like, yeah, train wreck. And what was the other one, Beck? What did she say?
I don't remember. We just watched it a couple of nights ago. I forget. Mike, you friggin' love it.
I'm just setting it to my list on Netflix.
It was something like a pile of shit and a train wreck, and she then later says, like, and that's offensive to shit and trains. It's really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah, that totally makes sense too, because what a year. What a year. So yeah, this episode's going to be on 3 stories about 2020.
Yeah, I'm going to get into it. My pairing has nothing to do with my story, but to do with the theme. Gotta say, I probably not going to like this beer, but that's just whatever. That's not new to anyone. But I was really disappointed because after I was leaving the liquor store, Mike made a suggestion that I could have just gotten Corona. And I'm like, fuck, finally a beer I would have actually drank. No, instead, I bought something else. And I don't want to be an asshole who returns beer. Can you even do that?
Not really.
You can.
Yes, but like, it's frowned upon.
I wouldn't, yeah. I know you can with wine.
I think you can, but...
So I picked, hold on, Mike, can you tell what it is from just the label?
Buggles and Warlock.
Okay, that's exactly
from Richmond, BC.
Yep. So the beer I picked is what Mike just said. It's a strong ale, 5.7% alcohol, another 650 milliliter bottle. It's a Beam Me Up.
Or Beam Me Up.
Yeah, it's an espresso milk stout.
Wait, I have one of these in my fridge. I should go get it, and we can both have it.
You can drink along.
Sure.
Yeah. It's so good.
Oh, I bet.
You're going to hate it, but it's so good.
All right, so Beck's got a can of the Beam Me Up. Nina's got a bomber of beer.
So the reason I picked it is because when I saw it, I thought it's, out of this world, which is what I feel 2020 was. It's definitely one to remember. So I'm going to open it. It smells not good. It smells like...
It smells great.
It's like espresso with beer, which is exactly what it's supposed to smell like, I guess.
Yep.
It smells so
dark
good.
as sin.
I like sin, though.
So, Beck, do you want to describe the beer?
Yes. It's creamy and delicious. It's everything Nina doesn't want in a beer. It's very dark, almost a little bit bitter.
Mm-hmm. It's got lots of coffee flavor.
Yeah, loads. Mike, you've had it.
I've had a couple different iterations of it. Yeah, it's usually nice and roasty. There's definitely a lot of coffee. They've got the lactose in it, the milk sugars, so it doesn't get broken down by the yeast, so it leaves a nice sweetness to the beer.
I love this one.
I'm glad that there's beer for everyone. So let me get into it. 2020 was a tough one. Yep. There's a lot of stuff that happened. Usually I like to focus my stories on like a bunch of bad criminals and a bunch of like not so great things. And 2020 had a lot of grabbing headlines. I decided to pick a story of something which apparently started before 2020, but I think because of social media and everything, maybe in 2020 is when it came relevant, or like where like us basic people found out about it. I'm going to talk about some headlines in regards to gender reveals.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Right. So you might ask, what are gender reveals? Because it sounds really interesting.
It's what white people do.
It is not what white people do. It is what a majority of white people do. Yeah, I'm not going to comment further on that. So what I decided to do is pick just a couple of funny headlines from 2020 of things that happened during gender reveal parties. For those that don't know what gender reveal parties are, is you have a couple who is expecting. Usually they're like the mom and the dad. I've seen a lot where it's like the surrogate's also there, or like when people are adopted, whatever, right? Like it's open that anyone can do it. Essentially, it's people come together to find out if what the gender of their baby is going to be. For example, you cut into a cake. If the center of the cake is pink, you got a girl. If it's blue, you get a boy. It's not like a complex thing. It's not like a super bougie kind of thing. However, of course, there's always people who take it too far. And I'm going to talk about some of those people. The first video I'm going to talk about, which is, yes, it's a video. It's like not even a 5-second long video. It's, I believe, posted on Twitter. This video was watched 11 million times.
Whoa.
Million. That's a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ridiculous. So I'm not going to say the person's name because it doesn't matter. And it actually also turned out to be a joke. She was trying to make fun of gender reveal parties, but it was taken so seriously that she faced a lot of backlash of how inappropriate she is and like what kind of mother is she going to be. She wasn't even pregnant. She was just being a smart ass. So she is, I'm going to describe the scene. Hardwood floor, white wall, kitchen in the background. She has a top on, like a white shirt. She is naked from the waist down. You just see like the mountain shape of her butt. and essentially they do a countdown. She farts, and her fart comes out similar to like a blowhole of a whale, and it's a color that she farts. Obviously, as I mentioned, if it's pink, it's a girl. If it's a boy, it's blue.
I have not heard of this.
No.
Yeah, so she tooted and blue powder came up. So she is having a healthy baby boy, even though she was actually pregnant. She was just trying to make fun of everything.
She farted a Smurf.
Yeah, so gender reveals are crazy. And this is just one of the things, but it kind of got me thinking of like, I think it's great to have some distractions, given everything that's going on in society and everything, but how the hell gender reveals ended up being as massive as they are, I don't get it.
No,
I think 10, 15 years ago, you open an envelope and you're just like, yay, or fuck, like one or the other. I don't know. Personally, obviously, you guys know I want to have kids. I'm one of the people who I don't want to find out what the gender is. It's like one of real life surprises. Like I just when it gets yanked out of me, I just want to be like, woohoo, it's a whatever, you know?
It's a crying blob.
As long as it's a healthy blob, I'm happy with that, right? Like whatever, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, so having said that, the first headline I'm going to talk about comes all the way from Australia. And actually the husband got into a lot of trouble because he was really upset about the gender that his child is going to be.
That's never good.
So he was slammed as being sexist for storming out of his gender reveal party after finding out he was having a baby girl. He was already the father to one 5-year-old girl, and he was hoping to have a son. But it's another girl. Obviously, a lot of people did the whole social media storm of trying to cancel him because that's inappropriate. it's sexist, it's this, like, how does your younger daughter feel about this? How's your future kid going to feel when they hear all of this?
Watch it.
Yeah. It actually got aggravated to the point where he had to make an announcement that, and I quote, he grew up in a house with 3 older boys and a younger sister. And I quote, I can't imagine seeing myself being outnumbered.
Oh, God.
So there's going to be his 2 daughters, his wife, and him, and he's outnumbered as a boy.
That sounds pretty fragile to me. I grew up outnumbered and it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up as a single child, so...
it was me, my
myself.
sister, my mom, and my grandma for a lot of it.
Yeah, so whatever. The next one I want to talk about, and naturally, to start the year off, we got to talk about Florida, because
Yes.
Florida.
Fuck yeah.
So this story is wild. It's short, it's like 3 sentences, but I'm going to say a lot of fucking information that you need to process. So, Florida couple, they have a pet alligator. Yes. Their gender reveal is that the pet alligator is going to bite through a balloon that's going to explode in whatever color of gender.
Okay, because of course that alligator wants to eat a balloon. Jeez.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's their pet alligator. The alligator's name is Amos, and he's 13 years old. I should also mention that this is their 10th child.
Wow.
Woo.
Florida couple.
A lot.
Freaking massive alligator biting through a balloon. Honestly, I got so excited about the alligator that I forgot to write down what the gender ended up being of the child. But it's their 10th one, so I'm sure you just chalk it up wherever. And yes, they have a pet alligator because that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It could be a lion.
I don't fucking know. He didn't look like no Tiger King to me.
Or
But-
tiger, yes, sorry.
Yeah. Naturally, I do want to talk about a title where actually a crime occurred. This one actually involved the police. It brings us to September 7th, 2020. Duh. A family members gathered. They're trying to ignite a pyrotechnic device. Couldn't figure out what it was, but they just said pyrotechnic device. And, it exploded. So they were trying to put it out, but they had literally bottles of water from the back of their pickup trucks, which isn't going to put out a forest fire in this case. Sparks went out. It essentially ended up spreading to 7,000 acres.
Jesus.
Hundreds of people were forced to evacuate from their housings. This happened in California, so they are kind of like known for the brush fires, and obviously it's drier coming right out of the summer there. Lots of firefighters were involved trying to keep the flames from reaching the homes. The family was being really good in cooperating with the police, but still trying to investigate on whether or not or how they're going to charge this family, if criminal charges are going to be laid. Now, in my opinion, yes. I mean, what the hell are you doing? Or if you're going to light off any kind of like pyrotechnic device, have, whether it's a fire extinguisher handby, like have something in preparation if something does go wrong.
Right.
In this one, no one died, nothing like that, but lots of property damage, right? Lots of just natural resources that were essentially just caught on fire, right? So it's not good. And 7,000 acres of land is a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, and how many animals died as well?
You can't
Like
put it
wildlife.
Yeah. While I was looking at this case, they were comparing it to another similar case, which actually I remember hearing about this fire. I didn't realize it was because of a gender reveal party as well. So I'm going to break the rules and talk about 2017 real quick. Essentially, also a gender reveal party. This one in Arizona. This one actually took out 47,000 acres of land. It cost about $8 million in damages. It took firefighters just over 2 weeks to extinguish the fire. The person who ignited the fire did plead guilty to accidentally starting the fire and ended up reaching a plea agreement to pay $8 million. I can't say the full number, so I'm just going to give you guys the numbers and you can figure it out. But the $8 million, $188,069.
Yep.
So he paid, let's say, $8.2 million in restitution to come up for this gender reveal. That went obviously horribly wrong.
But was it a boy or a girl?
Who
cares?
Yeah, I don't know. So obviously it's still unclear what's going to happen with this case from last year because they're still investigating and trying to kind of figure out what do you do with that. And of course it wasn't as big as this one or cause as much damage as this one, but nonetheless, definitely something unnecessary and just sad. And like, to Beck's point, like, yes, property could be lost, God forbid lives could be lost. Very lucky in these cases that no lives were lost. But how do you make up for all the other stuff around that's been damaged because of our stupid decisions to have gender reveal parties?
I mean, like if you want to do a gender reveal party, and I don't really understand them, but pop a balloon or something. I've heard a lot of these ones like that. Those two are often an explosive stuff you can buy at a lot of stores in the States, and you shoot at it. And when the bullet hits it, it explodes, and you can put certain chemicals in so they explode different colors.
Well, honestly, the story I was really stoked to talk about happened in 2019. I shouldn't say stoked. That's really bad wording. But there's two things that happened. It was 2019. One is a family ended up, also trying to build like a device. And they accidentally ended up building a pipe bomb, which blew up and killed the grandma.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I didn't realize someone had died on that one.
The grandma. So that's not good. But that happened in 2019. So technically, I'm not supposed to be talking about it right now. But there's that. And then also in 2019, there was, at a gender reveal party, like family members got into an argument. And anyways, people end up getting shot. Even the expecting mother was shot. Yeah, about a disagreement in regards to said gender.
What does red mean?
Yeah. So anyways, that was my story. A little light for 2020, but I would definitely like to leave gender reveal parties in 2020 and let's just start fresh. Let's start fresh in 2021. You know what? Let's just send like an email. Be like, hey, I'm having whatever. Here's my registry, my gift registry, or like whatever. Let's just be casual about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't understand finding out beforehand. People are like, oh, well, you have to, it's so people can get gifts, whatever. But baby doesn't know what color it's wearing.
No, it doesn't.
Baby doesn't care.
Baby shouldn't care either.
I don't understand. The only, except for diapers style, I don't understand.
Yeah, there might be different padding in certain areas. I don't know. Never bought a diaper.
I think we've come a long way in how baby products are in recent history versus back in the day when it was like polarizing, like pink is girls, blue is boys. Now you have the, like, I don't want to say like gender neutral colors. Like there's yellow and gray and white. And to Beck's point, like, it's going to grow out all of the clothes that you're buying anyway in a matter of months. B, it doesn't give a crap. All it does is, I guess it gives a crap. It craps.
Eat, sleep, poo.
But I can see how someone who is a planner wants to know these things. You got to pick out the names. Like, there's a lot. I get it. As I mentioned, like before, like personally, I think this is like the one true surprise you can have in the world. And I would like mine to, I don't want to know until it happens, but I think to each their own. I can maybe understand if you're trying for a girl and you've had 5 boys and you just like to know if you know this one. But at the end of the day, if it turns out to be another boy, you're still going to have a healthy baby boy, right? Like finding out the gender doesn't mean you can like cancel it and return it and retry it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
A little boy that like loves dresses and doing hair and playing, doing typical feminine things.
Yeah.
But,
who cares?
I don't know. I don't get it. And you were saying, Nina, that like as far as baby things go, it's not pink or blue anymore and things are getting better. And I agree they're getting better, but like we were at Toys R Us last year to buy a birthday gift for our daughter's friend. And it had like little play costumes for kids. And like the firefighter costume had only pictures of boys on it. And then the nurse one had only pictures of girls on it. And it was so gendered. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, what year is this? You know what I mean? It was bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen similar things too, like when you go to buy clothes, where there's like so many cute things for, in the girls section, and then the boys have like trucks and dinosaurs, right?
Yeah.
And Baby Yoda. Currently.
Yeah. But
Baby Yoda everywhere.
I know, it's everywhere. And I love it because I love Baby Yoda.
yeah, so I think if it's one thing I'd like to leave in 2020 is gender reveals. Like, sure, find out what your baby is going to be. Like, that's your own prerogative because you want to prepare for your pregnancy and whatever. But freaking don't blow shit up. Don't cause forest fires.
Yeah.
Don't kill Nana. Like, don't kill your grandma. Like, be sensible here.
I've seen the videos of gender reveal fails. Those are funny, where they're like, the parents are so excited and they cut into the cake and they pull the piece of cake out and it's purple. What the fuck does purple mean?
Well, yeah, they have.
Eat a nice piece of cake. So have the cake.
Yeah.
Move on with your day.
Well, there's funny ones too, where like the mom will like pitch a ball and the dad hits it and then it explodes in the color. Except I saw one while I was doing this research where the ball was a little sturdier than what we expected, and the dad ended up hitting it with the bat, and it actually hit his dad's face, and like blue powder exploded. Like, it's funny. I get it, but
Those are like, but why does there have to be an explosion? I don't get it.
I think,
Especially in a fire zone.
regardless of fire zone or not, like these other people who, like with the grandma thing, they built a fucking pipe bomb.
Yeah.
That's
Obviously,
something.
like not intentional. They were trying to like build like their own fireworks, whatever. But it's just like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. I like explosions, but come on.
So that's my story.
All right, my working title for this story was just Fuck 2020, but then I moved on and called it The Blast That Shook the City. And the beer that I have paired is Howsound Brewing's Mega Destroyer, which is an Imperial Licorice Stout, 10% alcohol. And I love the new design on the can. It's got like sea monsters like attacking a ship, which has nothing to do with the story really, but it's just kind of fun.
It is really cool, yeah.
Looks like an Ogopogo.
Exactly.
A Kraken.
The Kraken. But yeah, this is a huge Imperial Licorice Stout. So if you don't like black licorice, you're going to hate this beer.
I hate it.
Love it. It is like jet black.
I obviously hate it. Do I have to even say anything?
No. It's jet black. You can't see a bloody, like, little bit of light out of it. Nice dark brown head. Yeah, then the nose is licorice and roasted malts. Not much other than roasted malts and licorice. It's pretty strong.
Have you had that before, Mike?
Oh yeah, many times. Never out of the can, but they used to do the 1 liter bottles. And I used to drink the 1 liter bottle and have a good night. Bad morning.
Yeah.
It's roasty, it's chocolatey, licorice, a little bit of like coffee notes. Very mild bitterness, but it's definitely more on the sweet side than it is on the bitter side. It's really nice if you like black licorice, and if you don't, you're wrong. It's a crime in itself.
I hate black licorice so much. I always have.
No one's perfect.
Those goodies, candies that you'd get while trick-or-treating.
Yep.
Ugh.
Straight to my mom every year.
Oh, those are the ones I wouldn't give away. Love those ones. So this awful event might have happened right in the middle of a pandemic in 2020, but it really began way back in 2013. On September 27th, 2013, a ship that was sailing from Georgia to Mozambique had to make an unscheduled stop in Beirut, Lebanon. The ship seemed to have a weird air about it. It flew a flag of Moldova, a landlocked country in Eastern Europe that was assumed to be owned by a Russian businessman, Igor Grishkin, but actually was owned by a company out of Panama. The ship's name was the MV Rosas, and it was not in great shape, and it had all kinds of mechanical and possible engine troubles. There was also the fact that it seemed that the owners did not have the money to actually fully fund the trip, including the tolls to travel through the Suez Canal in Egypt. So, it's not looking good already. There was also the fact that there were reports that the crew went on a strike as they had not been paid their wages yet.
If you're in a boat, isn't it called a mutiny? I guess that's only if you actually act against the captain.
Yeah, I don't. There was a full mutiny, but there was definitely a bit of a strike. The company tried to pick up some heavy machinery in Beirut, and it was stacked on top of the cargo doors of the ship. This weight from the heavy machinery was too heavy for the design of the cargo doors, so they began to buckle. This is all to say that the MV Rosas was dead in the water in Beirut, and they were deemed unseaworthy by the state-controlled port. Below those cargo doors, there was 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate. If you do not know, this is the substance that is used for fertilizer production, but it is also used in the making of explosive, as it is highly combustible. So since we're in Canada, the legal maximum amount of ammonium nitrate to be stored in one facility is 200 tons. And that was 2,750 tons.
Holy crap.
Holy fuck.
On top of that, it cannot be stored within 91 meters or 300 feet of a school, hospital, hotel, sports arena, condo tower, office building, or any similar multi-story building where people might be gathered, according to the Ammonium Nitrate Storage Facilities Regulation in Canada. So, it's just to say that that's a lot of fucking ammonium nitrate, right? This is all to say that Canada has quite strict rules about the storage of the substance. Lebanon, on the other hand, does not have these rules. When the ship was refused the authority to leave the port, the crew was stranded. There were 8 Ukrainian and 1 or 2 Russians on board, including the Russian captain. It was kind of a little weird. They weren't sure if there's 1 or 2 Russians. 5 of the Ukrainians were lucky enough to be sent back home, but the remaining crew was forced to live on the ship indefinitely. Right around this time, Igor went bankrupt, and the company that chartered the ship lost interest in the shipment, and the decision was made to just abandon the ship altogether.
Wow.
So, when February 4th, 2014 came along, there were more than $100,000 US that was owed to the port and the port authority, and they would seize the ship. During the court proceedings, the remaining crew would finally be sent home to their countries. This was on the grounds that living on the ship with the ammonium nitrate was unsafe. Makes sense?
Yeah, no shit.
They had been forced to live on the ship for almost a full year by the end of it.
Holy crap.
2014 would see the ammonium nitrate finally removed from the ship. It would be moved to a warehouse 12 at the port. This was not a purpose-built containment facility, but just a warehouse. Why bother having it stored safely? The ammonium nitrate was just stored on pallets with no controls. Customs officials understood the risks that having 2,750 tons of explosive material in Beirut Harbor right downtown from the core of the city. So imagine Port of Vancouver having this similar idea.
I don't understand why they didn't sell it off to recoup their money.
Yeah, exactly.
What the hell do I know, though, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Who knows what kind of debauchery went on there?
Yeah.
Because it still has value.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you just abandon a ship? Mind you, let's say you can't do anything with the cargo. Why don't you sell the ship?
Well, the ship sounds like a piece of shit, but the explosives were definitely worth some money. These officials would beg judges to have the material moved out of the harbor via letters. These requests via letter would be sent on June 27th, December 5th, 2014, May 6th, 2015, May 20th, and October 13th, 2016, and October 27th, 2017. So you can see they were like, fuck, we need to get rid of this stuff now. And no one's doing anything.
Yeah, but it still took, how many years? And nothing was done about it?
Yeah. So like I said, yes, that's 6 requests that fell on deaf ears. They just didn't think that it was a big deal to have that volume of explosives in their capital city, where a population of 361,000 people, plus or minus, in the core of the city, and 2.2 million people lived in the metro area. They just didn't think it was a big deal to have that right there. So February 2018 would see the MV Rosas finally prove it was unfit for ocean travel as it sunk to the bottom of the port. They didn't even deal with it. It's just like...
It's like the Titanic.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck it, whatever. It sinks. So Warehouse 12 did not only house the ammonium nitrate, though, as it was a catch-all for anything being confiscated. It was also housing fireworks in 2020, among other things. There were some claims that in December 2019, there were some holes in the warehouse that had to be patched up. So finally, on August 4th, 2020, the port would have welders out to Warehouse 12 to fix some of the holes in the building. Because, you know, you kind of want that to be secure at least, right?
Like fireworks. Why the fuck?
Yes, I know. So anyone that knows the construction industry knows that there needs to be a ton of precautions when doing what's called hot work. Hot work is any work that could cause fires. It does not seem that there were a ton of precautions taken on this day, though. Around 5:40 p.m., just a short time after the work had finished, a fire was reported at the warehouse. Not long after, Platoon 5 was sent to get the fire under control. So Platoon 5 was a force of 9 firefighters and 1 paramedic. When they arrived, they already knew something was wrong. The fire was just too loud and too large for such a new fire, and they said it was creating a crazy sound. So the first of the 2 explosions happened at 6:07 p.m. from what would appear to be the fireworks. But life would stop in Beirut only 35 seconds later when the second blast went off from the ammonium nitrate. So that's the original explosion and the second one. And just, like, devastation. Like, they knew something was wrong. You could hear her fear. I don't know what she's saying because she's obviously not speaking in English. But you can hear she's terrified with all the fireworks going off and then just a massive explosion. So none of the 10 people of Platoon 5 would survive. That audio video was shot from an apartment patio in downtown Beirut. And the video is absolutely terrifying to me. The person started filming as the fire got worse, and then the explosions started happening. Luckily for both these people, they both survived the blast, but they were both hurt. I mean, they were pretty damn close. Now, before we delve into the aftermath of the blast, let's not forget that this blast happened in the middle of a pandemic where the medical system was already stretched thin because of COVID-19. Lebanon was also in the middle of a horrible financial crisis to boot. On October of 2019, Lebanon had seen mass demonstrations due to secular rule, a stagnant economy, unemployment, and endemic corruption, and terrible legislation including things like banking secrecy. They would see their inflation rate hit 50% for 30 days straight, and that's terrifying for any economy, I think. This would lead to Prime Minister Saad Hariri stepping down. This is all to say that Lebanon was already in dire straits when August 4th, 2020 struck. The first explosion caused by the fireworks came in at about 1.5 to 2.5 tons of TNT, or what Wikipedia mentioned would be like a mid-sized truck bomb. It's sad that this comparison even exists, in my opinion, but unfortunately our world kind of sees a lot of shit. But sadly, only 35 seconds later, the real blast happened. This was the 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate, and it caused a massive mushroom cloud and a huge shockwave that destroyed buildings, as well as smashing out windows and tossing people and furniture like rag dolls. This explosion was felt a long way away, and it could be felt in northern Israel and even in Cyprus, 240 kilometers or 150 miles away.
Whoa.
For people on the west coast of North America, this is a little more than Vancouver, BC to Seattle, Washington. So it's quite the distance. The big blast had a yield between 0.5 and 1.1 kilotons of TNT. according to one study, or zero 0.9 to 1.1 kilotons of TNT. Even more impressive, in a horrible way, is that makes this blast 1/20th the size of the Hiroshima atomic bomb that was dropped in 1945, and is one of the largest non-nuclear blasts in history. The record for largest accidental explosion is owned by Nova Scotia, Canada, though, in 1917 during World War I, when two ships collided with munitions, and it blew up with a force of 3 kilotons of TNT. So like 3 times bigger. The blast leveled Halifax. So this is back to the explosion in Beirut. If you were a nerd, they said that the blast and fireball had about 1 gigawatt hour of energy, and a quick Google says that the DeLorean in Back to the Future needed 1.21 gigawatts of energy. So you could almost run the DeLorean on it. The explosion also triggered seismic readings between 3.3 and 4.5 magnitudes. That's a pretty decent-sized earthquake.
Yep.
The main fire would burn all night and would finally go out in the morning, but of course the destruction went from the harbor and went well into the city. The port was decimated, with buildings being fully leveled. The blast caused a crater to form at the blast location, 124 meters in diameter and 43 meters deep.
I'm surprised the fires didn't last longer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess because a lot of it was steel and concrete, right? So there wasn't a lot of things to burn there, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I guess.
A series of grain silos located next door to the Warehouse 12 took the brunt of a portion of the blast, and much of those buildings were leveled. This was devastating, as it meant that 15,000 tons of grain were destroyed, leading to a food crisis. What was left after the blast amounted to no more than 1 month's supply of grain for the entire capital city. But on top of the port, hospitals were devastated, hotels destroyed, museums had whole collections destroyed, and buildings a full 10 kilometers away were damaged by the blast. Ships in the harbor were tossed onto land or sunk, including some livestock ships and edible oil ships, and at least one cruise ship. Even the airport about 10 kilometers away had a good amount of damage, with windows blown out, electrical systems being wrecked, and tiles from the ceiling being knocked out. The real horror would begin to show itself in the days and weeks after the blast, though. 204 people were killed, officially, with 6,500 people being injured, and the hospitals were in shambles in the middle of the pandemic. People from a total of 22 countries lost their lives in the blast, tourists and people like expats and everything. The investigation would begin right away and would theorize it could have been caused by a bomb or even a missile shot at the port, on top of the possible negligence. 16 port officials would be put on house arrest the day after the blast. The GM of the port, as well as the Director General of the Customs Authority, would also be arrested. Many more government officials would be interrogated by the courts. August 19th would see even more officials arrested, numbering a total of 25. They would even ask Interpol to arrest the Russian captain of the ship and the Russian businessman that had put the MV Warsis trip together, which seems kind of crazy. Can't really blame the captain and stuff for something that was caused by people that took the stuff later. It's kind of a stretch because they'd already been gone for years.
Yeah.
The 2 weeks after the blast were declared a state of emergency. The president, Michael Aoun, would claim the support was coming for the people hurt and displaced by the blast, but arrest was on the rise once again in the city. The prime minister, Hassan Diab, would call for an election to try and stop the crisis that was happening in Beirut on August 8th. So this is one of those countries that has presidents and prime ministers.
At the risk of sounding stupid, didn't know that was a thing.
Russia is another one. So yeah, there's multiple. I don't really understand it myself, but there's multiple countries that have the two heads of state. They both do different things. So this would see a large number of ministers resigning from their government on August 9th. The next day would see more resignations, and the entire Lebanese cabinet saw the writing on the wall, and they all resigned.
Wow.
When the cabinet stepped down, Prime Minister Hassan Diab would also step down. The president, Michael Aoun, would accept his resignation, but ask the outgoing members to at least stay on as long as it took to form a new cabinet. A new prime minister designate would then be announced in Mustafa Adib, but he wasn't able to get the government together, and he would also step down. It appears that Hassan Diab is still serving as a caretaker prime minister, as no new one has been elected since the disaster. In the end, the blast caused $15 billion damage, with insured losses at about $3 billion. This will likely go down as one of the worst blunders and criminal negligence cases in recent history.
Well, for it to have caused that much damage, and they had confiscated it for $100,000 bill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's so sad.
I understand why they're stepping down because of the negligence, but it's also kind of fucked up because this city, the capital that you're representing here, this is a devastating event.
Yeah.
They need to look up to their leaders to stay strong, to be there and figure this shit out. Even if the leaders are at fault, not knowingly at fault. I don't want to say these guys are at fault, but like obviously a lot of steps were missed or oversights or put under the rug. I feel like these people should have stayed, face up to what happened, fix the solutions, and then politely leave exit office.
Yeah, for sure.
But in the middle of everything that's going on in the pandemic, then you also just resign and peace out. So here, all of this has happened, all this devastation, and now also your leaders and your politicians who are supposed to fight for you and protect you are no thanks.
Yeah.
And exiting, like, that's just, it's very devastating, you know, and obviously it's not a super wealthy area either.
It's
so
it's definitely.
You're already dealing with so much other shit on top of the pandemic, on top of this now. So
yeah, unrest and war and all kinds of stuff in their past. So yeah, they've had lots of problems, and then to have this drop on top of it.
I think just given everything that 2020 brought, the pandemic is one thing, but for these particular people and everyone affected, like that's just a whole other thing that you can't. And you know, I know you mentioned, Mike, like other people from other countries that were also killed or whatever. Some places you can't travel, so how are they collecting their loved ones' bodies? How are they doing whatever, right? Like, how are you visiting your friends and family? You're not, right? Yeah. So there's just a lot going on there.
Just after it happened.
Shireen El-Zain was knocked unconscious. Her phone continued recording.
For 2 minutes, it was silent. I don't remember anything. And then I think we woke up and we started asking if everyone is okay. And we starting, after the dust was a bit less, we started seeing people walking with blood all over and screaming. People were screaming.
جواد افتح البناية ما توقف تحت البناية الزيت بعده عم بيهرهر.
The blast wave tore through Jamaisi, Omar and Hulla's world.
Frankly, we didn't know if it was a strike, it was a bomb, is anyone bombing us? I just walked downstairs barefoot, and I just felt I couldn't move my arm anymore, and I was covered in blood all over. I have stitches in my head, bleeding from glass, and my legs.
Their cafe was wrecked.
There were dead people on the streets. People were bleeding from everywhere. Buildings had already collapsed. It was absolutely nuts. And I got a hold of him on the phone, and he tells me, I'm alive, but I need a hospital.
The blast wave roared through Beirut at more than 300 metres a second.
And I got one other quick audio sample, and then I'll get into the end of my story.
Another would-be happy occasion interrupted by the explosion in Beirut. A wedding couple, she in her white dress, he in a tux, posed for their photos. They look perfect, made for this moment. But then all hell breaks loose. Windows are shattered, dust and debris fly everywhere. The camera that was capturing the joyous moment suddenly becomes a witness to a tragedy. You can hear shouts and screams. The landscape is transformed from one moment to the next. The photographer reported that neither the couple nor any of the people working on the photo shoot were hurt. Understandably, the wedding was postponed for another day. The original date, August 4th, 2020, will always be remembered in Beirut for one thing. This is Inside Edition Digital.
So originally that was actually the end of my story, but it's kind of funny how new info can trickle in, especially in cases like this one. So on December 10th, 2020, Judge Fadi Sawan had decided to file charges against caretaker Prime Minister Hassan Diab, as well as the former Finance Minister Ali Hassan Khalili, and former Public Works Minister Ghazi Ziter, and Youssef Fenianos. All four men had been charged with carelessness and negligence that led to the explosion and all of the death and destruction. These four are the highest level authorities to be charged to date, but this whole investigation has been conducted in secrecy, and it is leading to unrest in the country. The caretaker prime minister claims that his hands are clean in this tragedy, but we will see. The investigation does lay out that at minimum 10 different times it had been brought to the attention of the government since 2013 that there was an issue with the port from the military, security agencies, and the judiciary. President Michael Aoun, that gained power in 2016, claims that he only heard about the stockpile 3 weeks before the blast, and this sounds really convenient to me. He also claims that as soon as he heard about it, he ordered that it be dealt with. Because he claimed that he ordered it dealt with, he has no responsibility. The port was not his business after all. Michael Aoun was not president when the materials arrived in Beirut, as that was Michael Salamon. As for the prime ministers in the country, there had been 4 since 2013 when they acquired the explosives. The previous prime ministers claimed that they had no idea that the explosive material was being stored at the port. Hassan Diab himself claims that he only found out about the ammonium nitrate days before the blast happened. He claims to have planned to visit the site until he was told that it was just fertilizer. To me, at least, there seems to be a lot of people at fault, and I cannot see a government that was not aware of this very dangerous stockpile since 2013. This is the kind of thing that would always be brought up, and it seems that they are all kind of complicit at the top. We will have to see where this ends up going, though, because it's not finished yet. And that's my story of fuck 2020.
Yeah. That whole thing was just like because that happened kind of while the Australia wildfires were calming down.
Yeah.
By no means were the Australia wildlife fires put out by then yet, but like it was definitely one of those like, are you fucking kidding me? What else can happen?
Yeah. What else can go wrong in this terrible year? Oh, let's blow up a city.
I do understand where some of the politicians are coming from in a sense of like, well, I didn't know, because sometimes if you have other people reporting to you, but I think for this particular scenario, you know, Mike, you mentioned that like this was multiple years, multiple times it was brought up that like, hey, this shouldn't be here. We need to do something better with it. And for them then to, after all of that was brought up in multiple times, they store fireworks, if anything, beside that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that the Port Authority is owned by the government in this country, so it is a government agency that would have to be, reporting to either the president or the prime minister, like whoever. I don't really understand where it goes to, but they're going to be reporting to one of those two camps, regardless, about this very dangerous substance that's sitting there.
But I think another thing, because if it's deemed that the government was at fault, the government technically, I would think, would be responsible to fix everything that happened. And there's going to be a lot of people who are going to fight that to plead like, well, you know,
Not me.
it's easier to point fingers at some random Russian captain who had nothing to fucking do with it.
Yeah.
Than to just be like, yeah, we shit the bed.
I also found it kind of interesting. I didn't mention it in the story, but I noticed. Okay, so it's interesting too. This is a country in the Middle East. The prime ministers are typically Muslim, and the presidents are typically Christian, which is interesting. It seems to be that's, for whatever reason, that's the breakdown when you look at it. I don't know if there's a reason behind that, but I find that interesting.
I don't know anything about it, clearly, because I didn't even know there was both.
It's interesting that in the Middle East that there is a country that has a government that is formed between, if you're going to have religions involved with the government, at least they have the two main religions in the country that are involved with the government. But it's interesting. I thought that was weird. But yeah, that's my story. Before we get into our next case, we would like to ask for your help. Next time you open your podcast app, drop us a 5-star review. iTunes and Apple Podcasts especially recommend shows more to users when they get new positive reviews, and with your help, Brew Crime can spread to even more listeners. Regardless of your app, though, please rate and review and share our podcast with your friends. As more people that hear the show, the more the show can grow. Here are a few of the reviews that we have been left. The first one's from Malice Podcast. This is Ariel. So much variety and wonderfully engaging. So glad I discovered this podcast. If you're not already listening, what are you doing with your life? Next one's from Capable Podcasts, another 5-star review. Love listening to Brew Crime. They filled my thinking sideways hole that was left when the podcast ended. I love the case variety, so many I hadn't already heard about. The takes are fresh and very relatable. Binge-worthy to get you through your workday. Listen. And the next one is from Morbidology, Emily G. Thompson. Brew Crime is amazing. They cover a variety of cases, including lesser-known ones, and really put a lot of research into each episode. The chemistry is great, too. No awkwardness or forced reactions, etc. Great listen. If you leave us a review, we'll read them out on the show, too. Cheers.
I am doing a story that I have called Nova Scotia Strong. Oscar Wilde said, "Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But in this case, it facilitated a seriously deadly tragedy."
Yikes.
The beer that I have to pair with my story is Dead Frog's Blueberry Blast Kettle Sour. Dead Frog Brewery is in Langley, BC. And this is a 5.9%. It's a bomber. And the bottle says, "Pucker up for a refreshing sour made with fresh blueberries. A crisp, sour wheat ale with a clean and dry malt base, brisk flavors of lemon and fresh picked blueberries, and a refreshing tart finish." Oh my god. Blueberry, scent just filled my general area.
It's got a really nice, dark amber look. Small head on it looks like.
Yeah.
That's a good looking beer, at least.
Oh my god, it smells like heaven. Yeah. It's definitely more tart than sour, which is nice. And it's not too tart. It's very effervescent. It's a lot more blueberry than lemon, but I do still taste the lemon. I love blueberry and lemon together. So this is, it's really good. Nice. I quite like it. Because of the sweetness, it's more refreshing than too sour or tart or anything. You might even like this, Nina.
I was going to say the color actually looks not threatening.
Yeah. Okay, I'll jump right into my story here. Gabriel Wortman was born July 5th, 1968 to Paul and Evelyn Wortman in New Brunswick, Canada. According to his yearbook, he aspired to be a police officer. Instead, he became a denturist in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and owned a second clinic in Halifax.
That is quite the swing.
Yeah. Well,
wow.
That happens, right?
It does, yeah.
Oh, I think a lot of people want to be a police officer when they're younger, and then, it's a life commitment. It's not a job.
Yeah.
So Gabriel was successful, but the pandemic forced all non-essential services to close, so that it definitely had a big impact on his business and his life. Neighbors said that he struggled with alcohol and had a major anger management problem. But this was even before the pandemic happened. This was like this wasn't caused by the pandemic. This is how he was. These traits were actually picked up from his father, Paul. Although Evelyn would later deny it, Paul was a manipulative and incredibly violent man. Many other family members confirmed that he was frequently violent towards his wife and son, and basically to anyone. In late 1969, Gabriel's uncle Glenn, so Paul's brother, took him to stay with his paternal grandmother for his own safety. Paul and Evelyn eventually retrieved him, but not because Paul had improved as a father at all. I'm not always 100% sure when we should add a trigger warning, but in this case it seemed really clear that I should. So my next short part of the story involves animal abuse. So if you really don't want to hear it, I suggest skipping forward about 30 seconds. As a child, one of Gabriel's chores was to clean up after his dog. And there was an incident where he didn't do so. So Paul made him shoot the dog.
Wow.
Because he didn't clean up after it. Gabriel was 9 years old when this happened. Yeah, so he's a fucking monster.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Glenn said that Paul learned this behavior from their father Stanley, who had learned it from his father George, and so on. But I'm providing this information as background only. It's not an excuse for the kind of man that Gabriel would become, because the reality is that Paul's other brothers weren't violent. So it's not like it was inevitable. You know what I mean? Even as children, Paul's brothers were terrified of him because he would just beat the crap out of them.
That's not a good sign.
And it's like, was Paul horrible to Gabriel? Yeah, absolutely, he was. But does every abused child do what Gabriel ended up doing? Absolutely not.
Nope.
So in 2009, Gabriel found out that he had a biological brother living in the U.S. His parents had given up for adoption in 1970. So this was during the time that Gabriel was living with his grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
His parents had another baby, gave it up for adoption, and then went and got Gabriel. So Gabriel had no idea his whole life that he had a brother.
Jeez.
So his brother Jeff had 2 adoptive parents and a childhood full of love. In 2010, Jeff tried to have a relationship with his brother, but it didn't happen. Jeff last visited in Christmas of 2012, but his brother's temper, collection of automatic weapons, and grenades kept that relationship from growing.
Yeah, that'd be a small one.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a deterrent to my friendship for sure. So Jeff never spoke to Gabriel or their birth parents after that visit. In 2013, Glenn saw his nephew strangle his common-law spouse during a domestic assault. When he intervened, Gabriel went after him. Luckily, a friend showed up and stopped Gabriel from attacking his uncle. Many others corroborated the physical and emotional abuse that Gabriel inflicted on his partner. I couldn't find her name. I'm assuming it's because she doesn't want it out there, so I'm just be referring to her as a spouse or partner throughout the rest of the story. Gabriel co-signed on a house for Glenn, the deal being that once Glenn paid the portion that was lent to him by Gabriel, Gabriel's name would be removed from the deed. That's,
Totally makes sense to me, yeah.
Yeah, so Glenn paid what he owed Gabriel, but then Gabriel would just come up with excuses for why he couldn't have his name removed from the deed. In 2015, the property was sold to a woman named Lisa McCulley, but Glenn ended up having to hire a lawyer to get the full amount of money because Gabriel had never bothered to get his name removed from the deed.
God.
So, that's what you do to thank an uncle that tried to save you when you were a child. Like, he's just...
Piece of shit?
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
But once he had sold this house, Glynn moved out of the area, and the two never spoke again. So that seems to be a bit of a theme of people in Gabriel's life, is they get to know who he really is, and then they are like, okay, well, fuck off forever. You're a douche. So Gabriel wasn't just selfish and violent, he was also disloyal. Angela Sommier, a client of his, reported that he frequently flirted with her. She could ignore the flirting, but he crossed the line when he made an exceptionally crude remark while the two were alone in his office. She no longer felt safe and never went back again.
Jeez.
So he's a fucking pig as well.
Sounds like it.
Ms. Brenda Forbes was a neighbor of Gabriel. She and her husband are former military, and when they first met Gabriel, he showed them his stash of illegal weapons and asked if they could get him more. They vehemently denied this request and later reported this, as well as the domestic abuse that Gabriel was committing upon his spouse. They reported it to the RCMP. When Gabriel's partner found out about the other women that he was, flirting with or whatever, Gabriel assumed that Brenda had been the one that told her. He began stalking Brenda. He would show up at her house at the same time every night and just stare at the house. Just stand there and stare for like half an hour or whatever.
That's not cool.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. This just went on, and their fear grew. The couple finally got fed up and moved away, just sold their house and left the area. In 2019, Gabriel bought a 2017 Ford Taurus at an auction. It was a retired police cruiser that had been stripped of all its decals. Apparently, he had not exactly given up on his dream of being a police officer. He collected 4 old, stripped-down cruisers over the years. He had the decals remade and reapplied to one of the cars. He was warned by at least one RCMP officer to not drive his replica vehicles on the road. If that officer had known that Gabriel also had a police uniform, things may have turned out very differently.
I would assume so, yeah. Jeez.
On April 18th, 2020, Gabriel and his spouse were at a party in Portapique, which is 130 kilometers, about 81 miles, north of Halifax. They had an argument and left the party. They arrived home and Gabriel attacked his spouse and handcuffed her. He loaded his guns and ammunition into the replica cruiser and then set his house on fire. His spouse escaped and ran into the woods to hide. Gabriel went back to the house party and opened fire. 7 people were killed. At 10:01 p.m., 911 started receiving reports of shots fired and several fires. One of the first calls came from Jamie Blair. Her husband, Greg, had just been shot outside of their home. When she heard the shot, she grabbed their 2 sons that were home, 10 and 12 at the time, ran down the hall, and used her body to barricade the bedroom door to protect them. Gabriel shot through the door, killing her while she was still on the line with 911. The kids remained in hiding until they smelled smoke. They then realized that the gunman was trying to set their house on fire and decided that they needed to run for it. They ran through the woods to the neighbor's house. That neighbor was Lisa McCulley, who had bought Glynn's old house. She lived there with her 2 children. When the Blair children arrived, it was actually the McCulley children that let them in. Their mother had noticed the fire at the Wortman house, so when she saw what looked like an RCMP officer outside, she went to find out if she needed to evacuate her family. It was Gabriel she had seen. He shot and killed her. The 4 children hid in the McCulley house for over 2 hours until police came. The children had set up a safe word with 911 so that they would know to remain hiding until they heard that word. That's really smart. Like, I'm sure that's something that they have set up, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, if you think that it's a cop who just lit a fire?
Yeah, at this time the kids didn't know that because they were hiding, right? So they weren't looking outside or anything, but still.
Yeah.
Approximately 5 minutes after shooting Lisa, Gabriel shot at a vehicle that had pulled up alongside to see what was going on. The driver was wounded, but the vehicle sped off. The first 3 RCMP officers arrived at 10:26 p.m. and found 13 murder victims on Orchard Beach Drive and Portapique Beach Road. 3 of the homes were ablaze. Some victims were not discovered until hours later. Many of the victims were trying to escape the flames or trying to help other people escape.
Mm-hmm.
First responders found the injured driver of that car and their passenger. They advised officers that Gabriel was impersonating an officer and was in a replica car. Because his property was on fire and he was not seen taking the only exit out of town, it was assumed that he was on foot or already dead by suicide. At 11:32 p.m., the RCMP tweeted that they received a firearms complaint and asked residents of the Portapique area to stay inside and lock their doors. They were setting up a 2-kilometer search perimeter. As it turns out, there was more than one way out of town. An old dirt road through a blueberry field had provided the perfect, discreet escape route for Gabriel. That was why I picked the blueberry sour, because of the escape route here. Gabriel had left Portapique around 10:45 p.m. and driven 26 kilometers east to Beirut. He left police equipment and gun-related items in a ditch on the property of a resident he knew. I don't know why he did that, and we won't know why. On April 19th at 1 a.m., the RCMP released a bulletin to police agencies across Nova Scotia describing Gabriel Wortman as traveling in an old white police car and being armed and dangerous. At approximately 5:45 a.m., Gabriel left Beirut, heading north on Highway 4. He went to Hunter Road in Wentworth, which is approximately 37 kilometers north of Portapique. He arrived at the home of Sean McLeod and Alana Jenkins, whom he knew, at about 6:30 a.m. He killed them both, as well as their 2 dogs.
Jeez, and he knew them.
Yeah, he knew them. He then stayed there for a few hours, but it isn't clear what he did while he was there. Around the same time that Gabriel had left Beirut, his partner was spending her last few minutes in the woods. She'd been hiding there all night. She was that afraid of coming out. Like, she was that afraid of him.
Mm-hmm.
When she finally did, she went to Leon Joudry's house. He opened the door, pulled her in, slammed it shut, and locked it. He took her to the washroom, to his washroom, because she was wounded, and called 911. When police arrived, she confirmed that Gabriel was impersonating a police officer. She provided a photo of the replica vehicle. At approximately 8 a.m., an updated bulletin went out to Nova Scotia police agencies, which included the number on the cruiser. Because all the cruisers have, what is essentially a badge number, but for the car.
Usually has, city and then car number or whatever.
Yeah. Shortly after that, the RCMP announced that they were dealing with an active shooter in Portapique. This was updated at 8:54 a.m. to include Gabriel's identity. Gabriel set Sean and Alana's home on fire before he left. When their neighbor, Tom Begley, came to investigate, he was also shot and killed. At 9:23 a.m., Gabriel got on Highway 4 to head south back towards Portapique. Only 12 minutes later, at 9:35 a.m., he shot and killed Lillian Campbell Hislop, who was just out for her morning walk.
Yeah.
Around 9:48, he was seen near a campground in Glenholm. That morning, Kristen Beaton was on her way to work, heading towards Beirut. Her and her husband had heard about the fires that had been going on the night before. They weren't too concerned, though, as it wasn't really nearby, and they didn't really know exactly what was going on. Shortly before 10 a.m., she called her husband from the road to tell him that the RCMP had identified a shooter named Gabriel Wortman. He wrote down the name and looked it up on Facebook so that he could send her a picture. In case she saw him, she could avoid him, right?
Which is good thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At this point, they were both just thinking that it was some kind of like domestic incident, but, you know, nothing else. So just avoid this guy. It's not like he's after you, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So her husband found the picture and sent it to her, and that was the last thing that she read. She was then pulled over by what looked like a police cruiser. She was shot and killed. Gabriel then traveled a few hundred meters before shooting and killing Heather O'Brien, who he had also pulled over. Heather didn't even live in that area. She was actually on her way to be with her adult children, who had received the horrible news that their family friends, the Blairs, had died the night before.
Brutal.
At 10:17 a.m., the RCMP tweeted that Gabriel was impersonating an officer. They also shared the photo of his car that they had gotten from his spouse. He was seen on surveillance video passing through Truro around 10:20 a.m. At 10:25, he was caught on camera changing from his jacket and into a Visi vest in Millbrook First Nation. So it was like less than a half an hour after these two women were pulled over and killed that they finally announced that the shooter was impersonating an RCMP officer.
A little bit late.
Shortly before 10:50 a.m., Gabriel pulled alongside RCMP Constable Chad Morrison's cruiser at the intersection of Route 2 and Route 224 in Shubenacadie, about 50 kilometers or 31 miles from Beirut. Constable Morrison wasn't surprised by the approaching cruiser because he had planned on meeting Constable Heidi Stevenson at that location. This wasn't Constable Stevenson, though. Gabriel pulled up and quickly shot into the car with a handgun. Constable Morrison sped away, and he survived. He was eventually found by the paramedics in an empty paramedic station that was nearby. Gabriel also sped away from the scene heading south. Constable Stevenson was on her way north to meet Constable Morrison. After half a kilometer, Gabriel collided headfirst into Constable Stevenson's car. They both exited their vehicles, and she was shot and killed.
Oh, God.
Gabriel then stole her weapon before setting both cars on fire. Joey Weber saw the police cruisers on fire, so he stopped to see if he could help. He too was then shot and killed. Gabriel then stole Joey's vehicle and fled the scene. He soon arrived at Gina Goulet's house. She was a fellow denturist. He killed her, changed his clothes, and fled the area in her car. At 11:26 a.m., he was forced to stop and refuel. He stopped at the Irving Big Stop in Enfield, which is about 92 kilometers south of Portapique. So he's traveled quite the distance throughout this time.
Definitely.
Gabriel's luck at evading capture was finally turning. There were two RCMP officers at the same station, refueling at the same time.
Yeah, that makes it hard.
One of the officers recognized Gabriel, and when he tried to alert his partner, Gabriel raised Constable Stevenson's weapon. The officers opened fire and killed Gabriel. The rampage was over, but it would take hours to discover all of the victims. 13 dead were found in Portapique, 4 in Wentworth, 2 in Beirut, and 3 in Shubenacadie. 8 of these 22 victims were found in the remains of structure fires. Police also found 2 of Gabriel's old cruisers on fire at his Portapique property and a third at a property he owned in Halifax. The Nova Scotia RCMP speculate that Gabriel Wortman was an injustice collector So that just means that he would nurture grudges and convince himself that the whole world was against him. These feelings festered and grew until he burst. Glynn was grateful that he had moved so far away because he was sure that if he had been in the area, his nephew would have come after him during this spree.
Yeah.
Gabriel's partner later stated that Gabriel was consumed by the pandemic and felt he was going to die. He believed that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was going to start controlling all the money. To get ahead of this, he began withdrawing all of his money from the bank. $705,000 were found in a fireproof safe in the remains of his house. Gabriel's partner wasn't the only one privy to this odd behavior. He had emailed an acquaintance expressing his opinion that no one was prepared for it, but that he was well armed in advance. There were a lot of people that knew that he had all these weapons. And there were people that had notified local police or RCMP, but I don't know. There were 5 firearms found in the vehicle that Gabriel was traveling in. 2 semi-automatic handguns, 2 semi-automatic rifles, and Constable Stevenson's service pistol. They also found high-capacity magazines, which are illegal in Canada. As it turns out, all of the guns he had were illegal because he didn't actually have a license for any of them.
Wow.
On December 4th, Gabriel's partner, her older brother, and a brother-in-law were charged with providing Gabriel ammunition that he used in the attacks. So he just made other people buy this stuff for him, or some people speculated that he was making frequent trips across the border to Maine. So people speculated that he was smuggling them across the border in that way.
Could be, yeah.
So the 3 people that were charged with providing him ammunition, they'd fully cooperated with the RCMP, and the RCMP found that they didn't know ahead of time that Gabriel was going to do this. But I don't really think he knew he was going to do this ahead of time. You know what I mean?
Just lost shit.
2 weeks after the attack on May 1st, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that the sale, transportation, importation, or use of assault-style firearms in Canada was banned effective immediately. There's a 2-year amnesty period so that current owners can dispose, export, register, or sell them under like the buyback scheme. But otherwise, they're banned.
It's always crappy that it takes like a major event for them to ban them.
Yeah.
Although, a lot of countries, U.S., won't ban them after a horrible event, too.
Yeah. So many questions have been asked since this horrible tragedy, but 2 of the most important questions are, what was the holdup in getting more accurate information out? Information like live shooter dressed as RCMP officer is on the rampage.
Yeah, you think
like,
that'd
why
be...
wasn't that provided a lot sooner? And why were they using Twitter instead of Alert Ready, which is Canada's mandatory emergency population warning system? For like the Amber Alert, you get the test. Yeah.
Well, use everything. Use everything, not just one.
Why didn't they use that? Like, not everyone has Twitter. Not everyone gives a shit about Twitter.
I think also maybe just they don't want to scare people until they understand what's actually going on. Maybe it's part that they don't believe that it's... Not that they don't believe that it's not happening, but as like is this actually happening here? Like, this seems like an American... I shouldn't say that. It just doesn't seem like something that happens in Canada. So I can definitely understand how a small town police office force, whatever, even though they're RCMP, whatever, you don't expect that to happen. So I can definitely see the hesitation of being like, fuck, are we going to tell them that there's a guy dressed like a cop running around shooting people? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to have the same thing with those kids where it's like, hey, so code work that a real cop's going to use is banana, right? Like, how do you know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's mortifying.
Yes. It's horrible. All of it's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So, former RCMP officer Mike Gregory said that there was sufficient warning about Gabriel back in 2011 when there was a safety bulletin stating that he wanted to kill a cop and had a large number of weapons. So actually back in 2011, it had been reported that he had a huge stash of weapons, some of which were illegal, and that his mental health was deteriorating quickly.
Wow. That's a polite way to say that.
Yeah, so this was reported to the Truro police, but because the Truro police don't actually have jurisdiction over Portapique, which is where he was living at the time, they had to pass it on to the RCMP, and then it was up to the RCMP to investigate that and decide what was going to happen. Yeah, so the safety bulletin was released, and yeah, Mr. Gregory didn't think it was right that Gabriel had a history of violence that didn't seem to be stopping or slowing down, and yet the bulletin was destroyed after 2 years. The RCMP has visited Gabriel's home twice and did not see any weapons or threat of violence, so it was regular protocol to purge the bulletin after 2 years. But the thing was that the weapons were actually stored at his cottage in Portapique. So if they visited at his home, they wouldn't have seen anything.
Yeah, for sure.
The victims' families need to know what the hell happened, and they are fighting for that. There is an ongoing investigation into the actions of the RCMP, which is why I haven't delved too deeply into that at this time. Because it's still relatively recent, and there's a lot of information out there about this, and actually the Fifth Estate did a really excellent show, but because there's so much information out there, and a lot of it is, alleged blah blah blah, or accused of blah blah blah, and it's a lot of gray information, so I didn't want to go too deeply into that. If you are interested in hearing more about that, the link to the Fifth Estate show is part of my sources. So
nice.
It's really good. It'll break your heart though. Like, these people are so strong, like telling the story of their families who were victims, and oh my god, it was really good. And I haven't included all the victim stories here, as this case is still so fresh. I was concerned that the families of these victims wanted privacy, and that was why there was a lack of information on some victims. So hopefully I'm respecting their privacy and not like ignoring their tragedy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I didn't want to keep searching for information if it was stuff that the victims' family members just wanted to be left alone.
Intentionally keeping out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Gabriel's estate has been valued at $2.1 million because he owned 6 properties and 3 corporations. Relatives of the victims have filed a lawsuit against it for damages caused by the rampage. In June, Gabriel's spouse renounced her status as the executor of his will and eventually filed her own lawsuit against his estate on August 13th. Because I know she was part of getting that illegal ammunition for him, but she's one of the victims as well.
It's a lot of shrapnel.
Yeah. So Leon Judry, I'm really sorry I can't pronounce his last name properly. I couldn't find a solid pronunciation for that, so I do apologize for that. He was a neighbor of Gabriel. He said, quote, "People in the community always said to watch out for him, but I just thought he was an idiot." End quote. My sentiments exactly.
Yep, definitely.
But you don't expect the worst, right? Like,
no,
I don't know.
No,
not really. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is my story, and yeah, it's horrible.
It is definitely, and it kind of caps off the whole 2020. Really.
Yeah.
Horrible.
This was probably one of the hardest ones I've done. Like, we write about fucking shitty stuff, you know. But I don't know, this one was harder.
Yeah, no, it's always awful.
Well, I hope that 2021 doesn't make us be like, oh, you know what, we should do a topic on it.
Yeah.
It was one of those years.
I'd like to end 2021 with just one of our fun stupid crime episodes.
Yeah,
That would be nice.
It would be nice.
That would be a treat.
Together, too, would be really
some
nice.
Burglar falls through a roof at the convenience store. Those are the ones I like.
Yeah.
Girl farts, gender reveal. Ends
Yeah. That's good.
What does brown mean?
Florida.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. So, fuck off forever, 2020.
Yes. We don't want to ever hear your name again. Alrighty. Well, thanks for tuning in. You can find us at brewcrime.com. You can find us on social media at brewcrime. If you want to email us, send us an email at brewcrime@pacificbeerchat.com. If you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/brewcrime. Money's used to upgrade our equipment and make the show better. That support gets you one bonus episode a month and also early access ad-free to our episodes. So shout out to our Patreon supporters, True Crime Nana, Daniela, Ange, Nina's Mom, 3 Beers In Podcast, Amber, and Faves of Our Lives Podcast. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Brew Crime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution Licensed Audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo design was by Ben Greenberg. All cases and stories were written by Beck, Nina, and Mike, and our sources are put into the show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. We can also be found on your favorite podcast apps, our hosts, Spreaker.com, or BrewCrime.com, as well as at BrewCrime on Twitter, at BrewCrime on Facebook, at Facebook.com/groups/BrewCrime. Thanks for listening. This has been a production of Pacific Beer Chat.
Hello, listeners. For the Victim podcast is changing our look and our name, but the content of our stories will not change.
I'm hoping that by working to put monsters like you away, I might be able to stop the nightmares and start healing.
Keep listening, because our new show, True Crime, Dark Injustice, will continue to dig deep into the darkest parts of lesser-known true crime stories.
You made a critical mistake. You underestimated the mind, power, and will of your victims. While we were mentally strong enough to endure your countless hours of abuse, strong enough to endure the pain of keeping your secret, we were ultimately strong enough to take you down. Not one by one, but by an army of survivors. We are Jade Does no more.
The objective remains the same: to explore whether justice was truly served and whether the crime could have been prevented. We are committed to sharing these dark and harrowing stories in remembrance for the victim.
Do you remember me screaming at the top of my lungs and you yelling and screaming at us that you had a gun and you would shoot us? You remember me flinging my body on top of my startled husband to protect him from you? Do you remember tying our hands and feet so tight with many of our own shoelaces? Our hands and feet were numb for many, many, many weeks afterwards.
You can find True Crime, Dark Injustice everywhere you get your podcasts. Stay tuned.
Sorry, I shouldn't have taken a bite.
Blooper. Might as well pause for a second, then you can eat some more meat.
Sure, yeah, and I left the door open and they're getting heated out there. So.
Uh-oh.
No, we get really excited around each other.
How's the meat? It looks good.
Good. I have edamame too.
Yeah, I don't like that. I like meat, though.
That's what she said.
Wireless headphones for the win.
Yeah.
My mom got us some, just from this Serbian butcher store.
Nice.
Just some, dried meat, so just been snacking on that.
That's awesome.
I miss your mom.
I miss people in
With
general.
a good friend, I'd call her, but I don't call anyone. What do you do with these ones where you buy a bomber and you don't like it, Nina?
I empty it out in the sink.
Oh, God.
I just emptied the previous episode's one out.
Oh, you should just don't even buy it then. Take a picture of it.
It's fine. It's for a good cause.
Pour one out for your homies.
This one will be pour one out for 2020. Head titles. Headlines. Head titles. Some meat stuck. Sorry.
That's what she said.
Yeah, eat shit, poo, right? Eat shit,
Or
sleep, right?
Eat, sleep, drink. I don't know. Well, Igor. Oh, God.
Nina.
Gregeskin. It's GRECHUSHKIN. Gregeskin?
Can you spell it in our chat?
Yeah, one sec. You know what? Fuck that. I'm taking a picture of it. It's easier.
What is the screen I'm looking at?
It's where the videos are going to play. I just don't want to have to do
okay.
it. There's 3 of them, so I don't want to do them every time.
Sure, yeah, cool. Just making sure. Thanks.
Gretrushkin.
Gregeskin? Okay. Oh, I just spilled my beer. I got excited. The weight of the... Sorry, this sentence is wrong.
What?
You're doing your best, okay?
I wrote this quite a while ago. So this weight of the heavy machinery...
Are you serious right now?
Yeah. This
You got
weight...
this.
I'm trying to rewrite the sentence as I go.
This was the same year. Oh, cut that part out. I already said that. So, after childhood full of love. One sec. My headphones are apparently dying.
Uh-oh. Well, they're working wonderful otherwise.
Fuck. That means it's going to sound different mid-episode.
Can you just plug them in and keep going, or?
The cord is like 2 inches long.
All right, yeah.
Let's see. One sec. Pause.
And doodaloo, from someone's phone there.
Not me.
I don't know.
Not
I heard a noise. It's not mine.
I heard it too, but it wasn't me.
I think it might be from, I got a Facebook message.
Ah, that's probably it then, yes. All right, let's
Okay.
stop this recording.